Alexis Chen saw the first shadow figure when she was 15. Not a shadow cast by something. A shadow that existed independently. Standing in the corner of her bedroom. Humanoid shape. No features. Just darkness condensed into a form that shouldn't be there. Alexis blinked. The shadow was still there. She turned on her lamp. The shadow didn't disappear. Didn't react to light. Just stood there. Present. Observing. Waiting. Then it moved. Not walking. Gliding. Across her wall. Like it existed in 2 dimensions sliding across 3-dimensional space. It moved to her door. Then slipped under the gap and was gone. Alexis sat in her bed for an hour. Heart racing. Mind trying to rationalize. Sleep deprivation. Just hallucination. Something explainable. Something normal. But the shadow had been real. Solid in its darkness. And it had moved with purpose. With awareness. Like it knew she could see it. Over the next week, Alexis saw 11 more. Different shapes. Different sizes. All the same impossible darkness. All moving independently. All seemingly aware of her attention. One followed her to school. Stayed at the edge of her peripheral vision. When she looked directly at it, it didn't disappear. Just stood there. In the hallway. While students walked through it without noticing. Without seeing. Without reacting. One appeared in her classroom. Stood behind her teacher. Perfectly still. Then reached toward the teacher's shoulder. Alexis almost screamed. But the shadow's hand passed through. No contact. No interaction. Just observation. One waited outside her house. Every day. Same position. Same stillness. Watching her leave. Watching her return. Never approaching closer. Never leaving entirely. Alexis told no one. Because how do you explain seeing things that aren't there? That no one else can see? That move and watch and exist in spaces they shouldn't? She tried looking away. Ignoring them. Pretending they didn't exist. But the shadows persisted. Visible in her peripheral vision. Present when she looked directly. Undeniable. Unavoidable. Real to her even if no one else could see them. Alexis learned the rules slowly. Through observation. Through fear. Through sleepless nights trying to understand. The shadow figures were only visible to her. She tested this. Pointed them out to friends. To family. To strangers. No one else saw them. Everyone looked at empty space and saw nothing. The shadows moved purposefully. Not randomly. They followed people. Lingered near specific locations. Reached toward certain objects. Like they were trying to interact with the physical world but couldn't. Like they existed adjacent to reality but not within it. The shadows increased over time. More appeared. Daily. Weekly. Alexis would see 1. Then 2. Then 5. Then 10. They accumulated in her vision like some kind of progressive condition. Like her ability to see them was strengthening. Or spreading. Or consuming. And the shadows seemed aware of her. When Alexis looked at them directly, they would pause. Turn toward her. Acknowledge her attention in ways they didn't acknowledge anyone else. Like she was the only person who could see them. And they knew it. Alexis Chen could see shadow figures no one else could. And they moved. And they watched. And they were getting more numerous every day. Alexis was 15 years old. Sophomore at Roosevelt High in Seattle. Average grades. Average social life. Average everything except for the shadows that only she could see. She should have gone to doctors. Should have reported the hallucinations. Should have sought help for what was clearly a mental health issue. But Alexis didn't think she was hallucinating. The shadows were too consistent. Too real. Too deliberately interactive. They weren't random visual noise. They were entities. With behavior. With patterns. With purpose. And if they were real, if Alexis could see something that existed but was invisible to everyone else, then admitting it would get her committed. Medicated. Labeled. Destroyed. So she kept it secret. Lived with the shadows. Learned to function while being constantly aware of their presence. Learned to ignore the figures standing in corners. Following people. Reaching toward things. Existing in a layer of reality that only Alexis could perceive. The pattern changed 3 months after the first sighting. Alexis was walking home when she saw a shadow figure standing in the middle of the road. Different from the others. Darker. Larger. More substantial. It wasn't watching passively. It was positioned deliberately. Like it was waiting for something. A car was approaching. The driver looking at his phone. Not paying attention. Heading straight toward an old man crossing the street at the same intersection where the shadow stood. The shadow moved. Lunged toward the old man. Passed through him. The man stumbled. Fell sideways. Out of the car's path. The car sped past. Missing him by inches. The old man got up. Confused. Shaken. Alive. The shadow figure stood still. Then looked directly at Alexis. For the first time, she felt like it was acknowledging her. Not just aware she could see it. Deliberately communicating. Showing her what it had done. Alexis realized something terrifying. The shadows could interact with the physical world. Barely. Subtly. A push. A stumble. A nudge. Enough to change outcomes. Enough to save lives. Or end them. And only Alexis could see it happening. She started watching more carefully. Paying attention to what the shadows did. Where they positioned themselves. Who they followed. What they reached for. Some shadows seemed protective. Appeared near people who were about to be hurt. Pushed them. Moved them. Prevented accidents. Like guardian entities that existed just outside normal perception. Some shadows seemed neutral. Just observing. Recording. Existing without interfering. Like witnesses to reality who couldn't fully participate. And some shadows seemed malicious. Appeared near people who then had bad luck. Accidents. Injuries. Nothing definitively caused by the shadows. But too consistent to be coincidence. Too patterned to be random. Alexis tried to warn people. Tried to tell them when shadows were near. When danger was approaching. When something bad was about to happen. No one listened. Because Alexis couldn't explain how she knew. Couldn't point to the shadows. Couldn't provide evidence. Just sounded like a paranoid teenager seeing threats that didn't exist. Except the threats did exist. Just in a form only Alexis could perceive. Her parents noticed the change. You've been acting strange. Distracted. Jumpy. Are you okay? Alexis wanted to tell them. Wanted to explain about the shadows. About seeing things no one else could see. About watching entities move through space while everyone else was blind to them. Instead she said, "I'm fine. Just stressed about school." You've been talking to yourself. Muttering. Looking at empty corners. That's not stress. That's something else. I'm fine. But Alexis wasn't fine. She was seeing dozens of shadow figures now. Every day. Everywhere. Her world was populated by entities no one else could perceive. And she was increasingly unsure whether they were real or if she was losing her mind. The distinction was becoming meaningless. Because whether the shadows were hallucinations or invisible entities, the result was the same. Alexis was isolated. Alone. Living in a version of reality that diverged from everyone else's. And that isolation was destroying her. The breaking point came 6 months after the first shadow appeared. Alexis was in school. Cafeteria. Hundreds of students. And dozens of shadow figures. More than she'd ever seen in one place. All moving. All positioning themselves. All seemingly waiting for something. Then Alexis saw it. A shadow figure. Darker than the others. Standing near the entrance. Reaching toward the door handle. Like it was trying to lock it. Or unlock it. Or signal something. A student walked toward that entrance. Backpack heavy. Face angry. Alexis had seen him around. Quiet kid. Bullied. Isolated. The kind of student everyone worried about but no one actually helped. The shadow figure moved. Positioned itself behind him. Like it was following. Or guiding. Or pushing. Alexis stood up. Heart racing. She didn't know what was about to happen. But the shadows were converging. More of them appearing. All moving toward the exits. All positioning themselves like they were preparing for something. Everyone needs to leave, Alexis said. Voice shaking. Right now. Something bad is going to happen. People looked at her. Confused. Dismissive. Some laughed. I'm serious. You need to get out. All of you. Now. A teacher approached. Alexis, sit down. You're causing a scene. No. You don't understand. Alexis stopped. Because how could she explain? How could she say she saw shadows that predicted danger? That invisible entities were positioning themselves for something catastrophic? She couldn't. So she ran, grabbed her bag, sprinted toward the nearest exit, set off the fire alarm manually, created chaos, forced an evacuation. 3 minutes later, while everyone was outside, the student with the heavy backpack was intercepted by security. The backpack contained a gun, ammunition, a plan to hurt as many people as possible. The shadows had known, had positioned themselves, had been trying to warn, or prevent, or record. Alexis wasn't sure which, but she'd seen them, had reacted, had caused an evacuation that saved dozens of lives. And now everyone wanted to know how she'd known. The FBI arrived within hours. Agent Wilson. Different conversation than usual. More concerned. More uncertain. Miss Chen. You pulled a fire alarm 3 minutes before a potential school shooting. You evacuated the building based on no visible threat. No prior knowledge. No warning signs anyone else noticed. How did you know? Alexis didn't answer. Wilson pulled out a file. We've been tracking you. Your behavior. Your patterns. You look at empty spaces. React to things that aren't there. Move away from locations before incidents occur. It's like you can see danger before it manifests. Can you? I see things. Things other people don't see. What kind of things? Shadows. Figures. They're not really there, but they move. And they're around people before bad things happen. Or good things. They're like warnings. Or predictions. Or I don't know. I sound insane. Wilson was quiet for a long moment. You don't sound insane. You sound like someone with a minimal expression. An ability that gives you information others can't access. That's rare. That's valuable. That's dangerous. I can't control it. I just see them. I don't know what they mean. I don't know if they're real or if I'm hallucinating. Does it matter? If you can predict danger, even if the mechanism is seeing shadow figures, that's still predictive ability. That's still useful. Useful for who? For everyone. You could save lives. Prevent tragedies. See threats before they materialize. If you're willing to trust what you see. Alexis thought about the shadows. About the accumulated entities following people. Reaching toward objects. Moving with purpose. What if I'm just crazy? What if there's nothing there? Then you're crazy in a way that prevents school shootings. I'll take useful crazy over sane and useless any day. Alexis didn't join immediately. Spent 2 months in therapy. Psychiatric evaluation. Tests. Scans. Trying to determine if she was hallucinating or perceiving something real. The results were inconclusive. Alexis's brain showed unusual activity in her visual cortex. Like she was processing more information than normal people. But whether that information was real or generated internally, no one could say. Does it matter? Her therapist asked. Dr. Rivera. Specializing in perceptual disorders. If the shadows help you predict danger, does it matter whether they're real entities or sophisticated pattern recognition manifesting as visual phenomena? It matters to me. I need to know if I'm seeing reality or creating it. Why? Because if I'm creating it, I'm insane. If I'm seeing it, something else. And I need to know which. What if you're both? What if you're perceiving real patterns through a lens your brain interprets as shadow figures? What if the shadows are your mind's way of processing information most people can't access? Alexis hadn't considered that. That the shadows might be real and unreal simultaneously. Representations of actual danger rendered in a form only she could see. That's terrifying. That's also useful. If we can help you interpret what the shadows mean, understand their behavior, use them as early warning, then it doesn't matter if they're hallucinations or entities. There's still information. Alexis eventually called Wilson. I'll try. But I need support. Therapy. People who believe me. I can't do this alone. Done. The close call unit gave Alexis exactly that. The team. Support. Validation that what she saw, whatever it was, had predictive value. She ran 23 missions over 2 years, each one using her shadows as early warning, as threat detection, as a way to see danger before it became visible to normal people. Terrorist attack prevention. Alexis saw shadows converging on a subway station. Hundreds of them, all moving toward the same location. Security investigated, found explosives, prevented catastrophe, hostage situation. Alexis saw shadows positioned around a building, marking exits, marking danger points. Tactical team used her information, extracted everyone safely. Natural disaster warning. Alexis saw shadows evacuating an area days before anyone else knew why. Turned out a sinkhole was forming. Would have collapsed and killed dozens. Her warning gave time to evacuate. Each mission reinforced the same truth. The shadows were predictive. Whether they were real entities or perceptual phenomena didn't matter. They worked. They saved lives. And Alexis learned to trust them even without understanding them. But the cost accumulated. The shadows were increasing. Hundreds now. Everywhere. Alexis's vision was constantly populated by entities no one else could see. It was exhausting, overwhelming, isolating. She couldn't have normal conversations. Couldn't focus on normal activities. Couldn't exist in normal spaces because the shadows were always there. Always moving. Always demanding attention. Her social life disintegrated. Her friends stopped inviting her places because Alexis was always distracted. Always looking at things they couldn't see. Always reacting to threats that didn't exist to them. Her family tried to understand but couldn't. How do you relate to someone who lives in a different version of reality? Who sees threats everywhere? Who can't explain why they know things are dangerous because the explanation sounds insane? Alexis was becoming a ghost herself. Existing adjacent to normal life but not within it. Visible to others but not really there. Like the shadows she saw. Present but not participating. Observing but not experiencing. The breaking point came during a mission in New York. Mass gathering. Concert. Thousands of people. And hundreds of shadow figures. All moving. All converging. All positioning themselves like something catastrophic was about to happen. But Alexis couldn't tell what. The shadows didn't come with explanations. Didn't show her exact threats. Just positioned themselves near danger. And this time, danger was everywhere. Or nowhere. The shadows were so numerous she couldn't distinguish warning from noise. I can't do this, Alexis told Wilson over comms. There are too many. I can't tell what they're warning about. Everything looks dangerous. Or nothing is. I don't know. Make your best assessment. I can't. That's what I'm telling you. I see hundreds of shadows. I don't know which ones matter. I don't know what they mean. I'm just guessing now. Then guess. Better to evacuate unnecessarily than miss a real threat. Alexis called for evacuation, caused panic, disrupted the concert, mobilized emergency services. Nothing happened. No attack. No disaster. No threat. Just thousands of angry people. And Alexis standing there watching shadow figures that had predicted nothing. Except maybe they had predicted something. Maybe the presence of security. The evacuation. The disruption. Maybe that prevented whatever was going to happen. Or maybe nothing was going to happen and the shadows were just there. Existing without meaning. Without purpose. Alexis would never know. That was the curse. The shadows provided information but never confirmation. Warning but never verification. Prediction but never proof. Alexis Chen resigned from the close call unit at 17. 2 years of service. 23 missions. Hundreds of lives potentially saved. At the cost of her sanity. Her social life. Her ability to exist in normal reality. She returned to Seattle. Finished high school remotely. Avoided crowds. Avoided people. Avoided anywhere the shadows gathered in numbers she couldn't manage. The shadows were still there. Still visible. Still moving. But Alexis stopped trying to interpret them, stopped trying to predict what they meant, just acknowledged their presence and lived alongside them without attempting to use them. She got therapy, medication that dimmed the shadows slightly. Not gone, just less vivid, less demanding, less overwhelming. She learned to live with them, sort of. Learned to exist in a world populated by entities only she could see. Learned to function while being constantly aware of a layer of reality no one else perceived. Alexis Chen is 19 now. 4 years since the first shadow appeared. 2 years since leaving the close call unit. 4 years of seeing things no one else could see. Things that moved. Things that warned. Things that existed in spaces between normal perception. She still sees them. Every day. Everywhere. Dozens. Hundreds. Shadow figures moving through her vision like fish through water. Present. Undeniable. Real to her even if no one else can perceive them. She works remotely. Lives alone. Minimizes human contact because explaining the shadows is impossible. Because admitting she sees things others don't makes people uncomfortable. Makes them question her reliability. Makes them see her as broken. Maybe she is broken. Maybe the shadows are hallucinations. Maybe she's been living with a progressive perceptual disorder for 4 years and everyone has been too polite to commit her. Or maybe she sees something real. Something that exists adjacent to normal reality. Something that moves and watches and warns. Something invisible to everyone except her. Alexis doesn't know which anymore. Stopped trying to figure it out. Just accepts that her reality includes shadows. That she lives in a world more populated than other people's. That she sees layers others don't. That used to terrify her. Now it's just normal. Just life. Just the baseline condition of existing as Alexis Chen. She sees shadow figures no one else can see. They move. They watch. They accumulate. They're everywhere. Or nowhere. Or somewhere in between. And Alexis has learned to live with the uncertainty. With the isolation. With the knowledge that she experiences reality differently than everyone around her. With the impossibility of ever knowing if what she sees is real. Some abilities enhance you. Some empower you. Some give you information. Hers gave her vision no one else had. Showed her things others couldn't see. Let her perceive threats before they manifested. But it also isolated her completely. Made her unable to relate to normal people living in normal reality. Made her question everything she perceived. Made her live in constant uncertainty about what was real. The shadows move. That's the one thing Alexis knows for certain. They exist. They move. They're there. Even if no one else can see them. Even if no one else believes her. Even if she's the only person in the world who perceives them. Whether that makes her gifted or broken, Alexis stopped trying to determine. Just accepts that she's different. That her reality is populated by shadow figures. That she'll spend her life seeing things others don't and never knowing for certain if those things are real. The shadows move. And Alexis watches. And lives. And exists in the space between perception and hallucination. Between gift and curse. Between useful and insane. Some people see the world as it is. Alexis sees it as it is plus something else. Something dark. Something mobile. Something that only she can perceive. And after 4 years, she's learned that's not power. That's not ability. That's just a different form of isolation. A different way of being alone. A different version of reality that no one else shares. The teen who saw shadow figures no one else could see. And they moved. And they warned. And they were everywhere. Or nowhere. And Alexis Chen learned to live in the uncertainty. In the doubt. In the space between seeing and knowing. Between perceiving and understanding. Between reality and something else that might be just as real but invisible to everyone except her.